Hey guys, so today what we're going to be working with is we're going to be working with those special angles that we worked with the other day. Except the difference is today we're actually going to be applying them, right? We're going to be applying the special angle relationships. Special angle relationships that we learned the other day. And again, the other day a bunch of you had a really good understanding of it, which was great, which should make today's lesson a lot easier, right? So the other day we had 5 different types of angles that we learned. We learned about vertical angles, right? We learned about vertical, we learned about corresponding. We learned about alternate interior, right? We also had alternate exterior. And then we had one more. We had what we call then same side interior, right? And again, hopefully you guys still have a good understanding. Otherwise, if not, if you guys still have a few issues, we'll go over it and we'll practice with it again. We're gonna go over them right now. So we had those 5 angles, right? And all 5 of those angles, right? We had them all based off of this illustration that we were working with, right? And we had 2 lines, right? That was cut by a transversal. And then we had a bunch of angles that we had located there, right? Which we'll call just angle 1, angle 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, right? So just again, a little bit of practice from the other day. Whenever we had vertical angles were always opposite of each other, right? So we know that 1 was vertical to 3, we know 2 was vertical to 4, we know 5 was vertical to 8, we know 6 was vertical to 7, right? Vertical angles always across from each other. Then we had corresponding, right? So when it was corresponding, we had this transversal right there, right? So we had this transversal, this line that cuts across. You had everything that was on the left side of it, you had everything that's on the right side, right? And whenever it's corresponding angles, they're on the same side, and they're always the same type of angle. So what I mean by that is corresponding angles, they either open up or they open down, right? So when we're looking at corresponding, we know that 2 would be corresponding to 6 because they're both on the right side, and 2 and 6, they both open up, right? We know that 3 and 8 are corresponding because they both open down on the same side. We know that 1 is corresponding to 5 because they're both on the left side and they open up. And we know that 4 and 7 are corresponding because they're on the left side that open down. It's usually the one that people have most issues with, but again, those are corresponding angles. Alternate interior and alternate exterior, you guys actually did really well. Alternate means that they have to be on different sides, right? So one's going to be on the left, one's going to be on the right. And interior means that it's going to be inside, right? So interior is everything inside. Exterior is everything that's outside, right? So alternate exterior, we know it's got to be on different sides inside, right? So we know that 4 would be alternate interior to 6, right? We know it's those 2 alternate interior because one's on the left, one's on the right, and they're both inside, right? So 4 and 6 would be alternate interior. We also know that 3 and 5 would be alternate interior, same reason. One's on the right, one's on the left, and they're both inside, right? So 4 and 6 is alternate interior, 5 and 3 is alternate interior. Then we have alternate exterior, which again, different sides, but now it's on the outside, right? So for example, 1 and 8 would be alternate exterior because it's on the left and right side, different sides, and they're both outside, right? One's on the top, one's all the way at the bottom. And the other one would be 2 and 7. Same thing, one's on the left and right side, and then they're both outside, right? So again, that's alternate exterior. And then the last one that we had was same side interior. And same side interior is exactly what it says. It has to be on the same side, inside, right? So when it comes to same side interior, we know that it's 3 and 6. And we know it's 3 and 6 because they're both inside, and they're both on the right side over here. So 3 and 6 would be same side interior. We also know that 4 and 5 would be same side interior because they're both inside and they're both on the same side. They're both over here on the left side. So that's just a review of what we did today, of what we did the other day, sorry. What we're doing today is we're actually going to be just using all these angles. We're going to be able to identify them, but then we're also going to be able to figure out the measurements of each. And when it comes to that, there's certain relationships that are all pretty much the same, and then there's one that's different. And it isn't hard whatsoever, to be completely honest with you. Because the one thing I want you guys to realize is when it comes to vertical angles, right? when it comes to corresponding angles, when it comes to alternate interior, and when it comes to alternate exterior. All four of those, they're always going to be congruent, always. And what that means, guys, is since all four of those are going to be congruent, they're always going to be the same. So basically, if we have vertical angles, if one is 50, the other one's going to be 50. If we have alternate interior angles, if one's 100, the other one's going to be 100. So whenever we have one of these four types of angles, it's always going to be congruent, always. It's always going to be the same measure, always. The only one that's different, and that's the only one that I left out, is same side interior. Same side interior is the only one that's different. And what same side interior is, and again, it's a new word, it's not hard. Here, let me actually write it smaller just so you guys can see it better. I'm sorry about that. When it comes to same side interior, it's something called supplementary. Supplementary angles, right? And what supplementary angles means, and it's the only one that's supplementary is same side interior. Supplementary are literally two angles, any two angles that add up to 180, that add up to 180 degrees. It's the only one. It's the only one that's supplementary, same side interior. Same side interior is the only one that adds up to 180, both of them. Everything else is going to be exactly the same. So whenever you're analyzing which is the only different angle relationship, it's same side interior because it's the only one that has to add up to 180 degrees. Everything else is going to be the same. But all of this is only true when one certain thing happens with the lines, which I'm going to show you. So again, the first thing I want you guys to realize when it comes to all these angles, vertical, corresponding, alternate interior, alternate exterior, they're all always going to be the same. The only one that's different is same side interior. Same side interior is always going to add up to 180. But all of this is true, and this is where we're going to start going to the practice now, which becomes very easy to actually deal with. The only way that that happens, where all of those angles are either congruent or supplementary, is if these two lines are parallel. And what that means, parallel, right? Those lines have to be parallel. And what parallel means, if you guys don't know, parallel means that lines will never intersect. Lines that will never intersect. Never going to meet, they're never going to touch, never. So in order for all of this to be true, those lines have to be parallel. They can't ever touch. And the one way that we show that they're parallel is by putting these arrows right there. Because the second you see those arrows, since that has one and that has one, it means that they're never going to touch. They're going to be parallel. And the second that you know that these don't touch, it means they're changing the same. Because now if one was going this way, another one was going this way, if they meet, the angles aren't the same anymore. Now if everything is parallel and it stays the same, nothing is changing. It's all moving uniformly. It's all moving the same way. That's why it's important that it has to be parallel. So always remember, for all of this to be congruent or supplementary, these lines have to be parallel, right? So knowing that now, let's say we actually wanted to apply this to be able to figure out the measurements of certain angles, right? Let's say that this one here, let's say that this here is 132 degrees, right? Let's say I want to solve for x, right? The first thing that I would say to you before anything else, think about what kind of angles you have, right? So we're looking at this, and we know that these two angles right there, since they're literally opposite of each other, we know automatically that those are vertical angles, right? Because they're crossing each other. And always remember, whenever it comes to vertical angles are always going to be congruent, always. Since they're congruent, if that's 132 degrees, automatically x is 132 degrees. 132 degrees. Just for the fact, vertical angles, they're always equal to each other. So if one's 132, the other angle is 132. And that's all it is, guys, when it comes to applying it. We're going to do a little bit more practice for you to see the difference, but that's all it is, guys. It's just knowing what kind of angles we're dealing with, and then how their measurements come into play off of that. So let's now use another type of angle, right? Let's say that I give you this. Let's say that this here is 100, no, not 100. let's say that this angle here is 73 degrees, right? And let's say I want to solve for f. First thing again, let's figure out what kind of angles they are, right? So we're looking at them, right? We know that this one's on the left side. We know that this one's on the right side, again, of that transversal. This is on the left, this is on the right. They're both inside, so automatically we know alternate interior, right? Alternate interior. And since it's alternate interior, same thing that we said before. Whenever it's alternate interior, they're both congruent, they're both the same. So if that's 73 degrees, automatically F is going to be 73 degrees. Just for the same reason, again, whenever you're dealing with alternate interior angles, they're congruent, right? Whenever you're dealing with vertical angles, they're congruent. So again, just do a little bit more practice with this, because I do want you guys to actually be able to identify all of them and know what you're working with and when the situations change up. Let's say now that this one here is going to end up being 154 degrees, right? And I want to solve for A. Then, always in the back of your mind, think, what kind of angles am I working with? So we know that this here is on the left, that's on the right, right? They're both outside now because everything here is inside, everything here is outside. So if they're on different sides on the outside, we call them alternate exterior, right? We have alternate exterior angles. And given alternate exterior angles, again, think. We know that alternate exterior angles are supposed to be congruent to each other. So if that's 154, automatically A is 154, right? We know that A is 154 degrees, automatically. And now again, just keep practicing. Because the most important thing, guys, and I do want you to do well on the quiz, because the quiz that you guys have next class, it is based on all of these different angle relationships. So if us going over it helps you out, it's completely worth it. Let's say that this one here, let's say that that's 74 degrees, right? And I want to solve for G. Okay? Again, let's look at the angles we have. They're both on the same side, right? 74 opens up, G opens up. So if they're both on the same side and they're both opening the same direction, we know they're corresponding angles, right? And the fact that we have corresponding angles, automatically we know. Again, corresponding angles, they're supposed to be congruent. They're supposed to be the same. So if that's 74, G is going to end up being 74, right? Sorry about that. We know that G is going to end up being 74 degrees. Because again, when it's corresponding angles are always congruent to each other. Which means the only one that we have left that we haven't gotten over, which again, it's the only one that's different from all the other angle relationships, is going to end up being same side interior, right? And again, it's not a surprise, but it's just so you know that when we're dealing with same side interior angles, right? They're both going to be inside, they're both going to be on the same side. So let's say that this here is 110 degrees right there. Let's say I wanted to solve for M, right? So again, we know they're both on the inside, they're both on the same side, so we know that they're going to be same side interior, right? And whenever it's same side interior, again, it's the only angle that's different from all the other ones, right? Because same side interior, it's the only one that's going to be supplementary. And whenever you hear the word supplementary, always think it's two angles that add up to 180 degrees, right? It's the only one that's going to add up to 180. So if we know, let's say that those two add up to 180, right? If that's 110, the way that we figure out M is we would end up doing 180, right? Minus 110. And the reason we're doing 180 again is whenever it's same side interior, they're supplementary, which means it adds up to 180. So if we do 180 minus 110, it's going to give us 70 degrees, right? We know that M is 70. And if we go to check it then, which is always really easy to do, if we were to add up 70 with 110, those two add up to 180, which means what we said is true. Again, always remember, the only one that's different is same side interior. Same side interior is always supplementary. All the other angle relationships, guys, always add up, are always congruent to each other. They're always going to be the same. And the reason that we use all of this, again, it's just so we can actually figure out everything else that we have. Because it doesn't seem like it, but once you have one, you can figure out everything, right? And again, all of these angles being either congruent or supplementary, it all is based on the fact that these lines have to be parallel. They can never touch. Because now, let's say that I have this, right? And this is where all this comes in handy. Let's say that this angle here is, let's say it's 130. The fact that these are parallel, we can now figure out everything based on that one number. And here's why. If that's 130, automatically that's 130, right? Because they're vertical angles. And vertical angles are always the same, right? If that's 130, automatically we know that this is 130. And it depends how you want to see it. If you want to look at these two, those two are corresponding, so they're the same. Or you can say that these two here are alternate interior, because they're both inside different sides, and alternate interior, same angle, right? If we look at this, if that's 130, automatically this one has to be 130, because those two are alternate exterior, which means they're the same. Also, we see vertical angles. This one's 130, so that one's got to be 130, right? Vertical. And now you can use the idea of supplementary angles, right? We know that this one and this one, since they're same side interior, they have to add up to 180, right? So if that's 130, this has to be 50, right? Because 50 plus 130, these two add up to 180. And the fact that you have now that that's 50, we know if that's 50, this is 50 because they're vertical, right? If this is 50, automatically this is 50 because those two, again, they are alternate exterior. And if that's alternate exterior, I'm sorry, if that's 50, this one here has to be 50 because vertical angles again. And that's the whole point, guys. Just having one angle, you can figure out everything based on those angle relationships. That's why it's so important to know those. Again, hope this helped. Let me know if you have any issues, guys.